Good evening to everybody. I would like firstly to thank to all of you for joining to us this evening. And I am really very happy to start these meetings again after 3 years of break. Together with Ankara Yıldırım Beyazıt University and Econometric Research Association, we used to make these seminars 3 years ago. We had to stop for some time, but really I am very happy now to restart these seminars, and we will try to make such seminars every month, so that I would like to see you. I would like to join with you in the future seminars as well. Today, our guest is Mustafa Özer, Professor Mustafa Özer. Firstly, I would like to give some information about him. He is a professor at the Anadolu University in Eskişehir. And about his research area, we can say firstly that he works on applied econometrics, and especially the fields are tourism economics, financial markets, Turkish economy, and open macroeconomy. Moreover, he works on financial crisis, business cycles, and as well as civil society, and he publishes articles in international journals, especially specific areas of financial market interactions, current account deficits, and its effects on macroeconomy, foreign trade growth, and tourism. He teaches at the level of PhD econometric PhD and gives econometric courses. And he also teaches in Social Science Institute of Anadolu University, and moreover in Belgrade Banking Academy in Serbia. He has several national and international projects regarding the role of civil society in Turkey, especially measuring the value added and employment contributions of civil society. He has many membership in scientific committees of international conferences like MIBES, ICOBEAS, and so on. And he is an editor of International Econometric Review. Actually, this journal is published by Econometric Research Association. He has several editorial board membership in international scientific journals, such as Quarterly Journal of Economics and Economic Policy, Journal of Risk Management, Journal of Central Banking Theory and Practice, and and contributes in some journals in Turkey. Moreover, Singapore Economic Review and Financial Innovation as reviewer, and Sage Open as an article editor and reviewer. When we look at his most recent publications, we see several important journals like Research in Transportation Economics, the Mehmet Akif Ersoy University Journal of Economics and Administrative Sciences Faculty, Economics of Agriculture, Journal of Balkan and Near Eastern Studies, European Journal of Tourism Research, Quarterly Journal of Economics and Economic Policy, Journal of Central Banking Theory and Practice. Of course, these are only the most recent ones, and before these there are several publications of him which can be seen in several important journals. Before giving the floor to Professor Özer, let me explain how we will proceed. Professor Özer will talk 30 minutes, and then we will give the floor to the audience. And at the top, there is a chat button on right-hand side. If you want to ask a question to Professor Özer, or if you have some comments, you can use that chat button and say that you want to talk, so that we will see that you want to talk, and we will give the floor to you. And just right of it, there is a hand. It is also possible that you can raise a hand, but sometimes in these meetings it becomes hard to see the hands. It may be if you use the chat button and state that you want to ask a question, so that we will not miss. Questions and comments will be taken for 20 minutes. And then we will end the seminar. So, any question to me now from the audience? I think no. I would like to give the floor to Professor Özer. Yes, please, Professor Özer.
Thank you, Sıdıka, for your opening speech and introduction. And also, I'd like to thank you again for organizing this conference and the colleagues at Yıldırım University and my friends in the Economic Research Association. As we announced, today's topic is the deficit and deindustrialization in Turkey. My main aim is to just show the connection between the deficits in Turkey and the deindustrialization process in Turkey as well. But before starting and giving my reasoning why I choose to this topic and then how I pursue my analysis, let me start with my conclusion. It's a little bit different to other seminars or conferences. My point is that everybody knows it's a well-written literature about the deindustrialization and the classical and traditional or standard explanations of this process. My point is that I'm not ignoring these explanations, and what I'm trying to do here is that based on the Turkey expressions, I'm trying to add a further explanation to the deindustrialization process in Turkey. And therefore, my first point that I like to make is, and I'm calling the process in Turkey as a premature deindustrialization. And I will explain later why I say this. And I'm referring to the process results from economic policies implemented starting from the early 80s and what we call as a neoliberal policies. And that's the policies we have to blame for this process too. And therefore, my whole discussion and explanation basically focus on how these policies lead to such process. And that being said, and I'm going to raise a good question because the answer at the end. And does the industrialization matter for the growth? An answer to this question has a lot of dimensions, particularly and for the future of the Turkish economy. And that being said, let me start just defining, these are the all well-known issues. But especially when we look at common approach to define this process, people usually take it as a form of decline within the secondary sector of the national economy, particularly focusing on the manufacturing. You might think this decline as a part of some structural transformation in the given economy, and also a regular or standard evaluation of the national economy as well. But initially, when we look at the process, and people thought that it's the problem of the just advanced nations. But it turned out, especially recently, most of the middle-income countries, even the lower-income countries, also suffering from this problem, particularly in Africa and some Asian nations as well. So what is worrying about this process is that it's not creating decline in the share of the manufacturing sector in many aspects in the economy. It is also creating a lot of social and economic problems as well. When I always think about this problem, I always remind the Detroit city of the United States, and earlier 80s and now. My focus especially regarding this definition is that, and it also explains my approach to the problem, usually focus on as a long-term contraction of the manufacturing sector. This refers to the absolute contraction. And it also reflects a shift from the manufacturing to the services. We can go one more further step. It is a continuation of the shift from services to knowledge-based sectors as well. And if we accept this continuation, it implies and also highlights the importance of the relative contraction in this process. What people usually do to see this effect, whether there's an absolute contraction or relative contraction taking place under these developments, they usually use two measures. What they do look at is that they look at the sector's contribution to the value added and the sector's employment contributions. And obviously, there are some alternative definitions. I don't want to spend too much time, but mostly they focus on the some other aspects of the manufacturing, along with the absolute and relative contraction. And especially, the Tregana approaches can be taken as a different, because I will use later in the my presentation. As I said earlier, I consider Turkey's process as a premature deindustrialization. That's why we first should understand what do I mean by this. Now, obviously, if the country suffers from the premature deindustrialization, the industrialization process starts earlier than the advanced countries' processes. but the symptoms are the same. But comparing the per capita level of people and the employment share, it's not similar to what the case in the international. And therefore, the process seems to be creating more destructive effects in the national economy comparing the advanced nations experienced earlier these processes. And therefore, we need to understand clearly and properly what factors, besides factors that I indicated earlier, can help to explain this phenomenon. And I try to provide one more explanation. I think additionally to what I said so far, these policies that I indicated earlier, what we call as the neoliberal policies, are the prime suspects for the premature deindustrialization in Turkey, particularly the policies regarding the liberalization of the trade, liberalization of the product markets, implemented monetary policies and financial liberalizations. And especially later on, I will spend some time, and the uncontrolled liberalization of the foreign capital accounts of Turkey in 1989. That's the, I think, most important part of our discussion. So what are the causes? And these causes are explaining basically the process taking place in the advanced countries. These are widely written and explained in the literature. And most used one is the intersectoral division of the labor, outsourcing. And according to the people using these causes as an explanation to the deindustrialization in the advanced countries, most of the services job in the manufacturing, like designs, catering, and transportation and security, is just reclassified to the some services sector. That's why we need to see, or we experience a decline in the employment contribution of the sector. Another mainstream explanation, I will say, uses what we call in microeconomics the angle law. I'm sure you already remember. And based on this angle law, people claim that we should expect a decline in the demand for the manufacturing products as the countries become prosperous. And another explanation, which can be applied to the Turkish case, cross-sector differences in the technology. So if there is a slower growth in the manufacturing than the territory sectors or the knowledge-based sectors, obviously we should expect a decline in its share in both employment and the output. But we have to understand, before giving credit to this explanation, why there should be and why there will be a productivity slowdown in the manufacturing sector. That's another important question we need to understand. And also people use the international trade. Well, this is a very well argument also. If the negative effects of the international trade, especially the imports from the lower cost producers, for example, China and India, is a close substitution of what the Turkish manufacturing sector is producing, and obviously it will cause a decrease in the employment contribution as well. And lastly, this makes sense also, if there is a decrease in the gross fixed investment in the manufacturing sector, especially the purchase of the new equipment, the machinery as well, and obviously the sector's contribution will decline. So if we use all these causes, we can explain this industrialization process by using the raw terms well-known inverted U curve. If, in other words, if we accept that these are the 5 prime suspects or reasons of the deindustrialization taking place in not only in the advanced countries but also middle income and the lower income countries, we should rely on this just one explanation. And that explanation, I think, should be considered as a studies facts of a natural evaluation of like a market economy or advanced economy indeed. Because as the manufacturing sector produces more, there will be increase in the per capita income along with like employment of the sectors. When the sector's contribution reaches to a maximum point and then starts declining. So this downward sloping part of the inverted U curve corresponds to this deindustrialization process. And also, Palma gives some additional sources of deindustrialization, but these additional sources should be taken as a complementary explanation to what we said so far. But the third explanation is the basis for my explanation. In other words, I based my explanation based on the third, like Palma's third explanation to the process. But I added one more dimension to what the Palma said. So according to the Palma, Dutch disease could be seen or could be used another explanation for the deindustrialization process. But what Palma indicated is just regards to how the nation's invention of the new natural resources will affect or tourism, for example, or export finance, will affect the country's manufacturing factor, the sector, sorry. I'm not going to focus on his Palma's explanation, though. But I borrowed like explanation of the Dutch disease, but I related this Dutch disease with the capital inflows into Turkey. That's if you might say, my contribution to this presentation, though. Because I do believe that in Turkey, this uncontrolled liberalization of the foreign capital accounts in 1989, which caused heavy inflows of especially what we call as a hot money or speculative short-term inflows of money into the Turkish markets, causing a real appreciation of the Turkish lira, and also causing the manufacturers external competitiveness. And as a result, our industrial sector, including the manufacturing, became heavily dependent on the imported imports. That's the main story behind my explanation. I think the premature deindustrialization process in Turkey. And I call it as a form of Dutch disease as well. Let's look at first, after this explanations, what are the traditional measures of this industrialization is shaping in Turkey. And I borrow some data from the World Bank. As you can see, I just highlighted here. If you see the cursor here, that point is the 1989, which is the date of uncontrolled liberalizations of the foreign capital accounts. Starting from that date, it can be seen easily that the sector's value-added contribution to the GDP is constantly falling, and until 2011. But there are slight increases, but it's in the radical shifts in the composition of the Turkish economy, not actually the significant increase in the value-added contribution of the manufacturing sector. And also, second, I focus on the employment contribution of the manufacturing, even though I took the industry here because, as you know, that most of the industrial sector consists of the manufacturing. So development in the industrial sector's employment and fairly reflect employment share of the manufacturing as well. When we look at employment share, also persistently or constantly declining. So both measures are indicating that there is a deindustrialization process taking place in the Turkish economy. And that being said, let me explain my additional explanations and try to connect the deficits with this process. And as we all know, a country suffers from the current account deficits, could result from the bad reason and the good reasons. But whatever the reasons behind the current account deficits, I would say that if there is a sudden stop and the sudden reversal of the capital flows, country always suffers. So don't rely on or don't use the explanation for try to make the current account deficits not so important than relying on the good reasons. To see the importance of the current account balance developments in Turkey, I think we have to focus on its ratio to the exports. And most of the people in literature is using the GDP ratio to the GDP, current account balance ratio to the GDP. I don't think it's a good indicator for the Turkish economy because of the volume of the exports in Turkey and the number of the goods that we are exporting. So when you look at the developments of the current account balance export ratio and ignoring the last 2 years, I think it's giving a lot of alarming signals. And the ratio of the current account balance to the exports is extremely high. And therefore, we need to understand what causes this widening current account deficits. And the prime suspect, as you can see here, is the increase in the trade deficits. No question about it. Just graphic is just illustrating clearly. So what are the reasons for widening the trade deficits? Because there are a lot of claims. So to me, main contributor to trade deficits, as you can see from this graph figure, in the imports of the intermediate goods. And Turkey, as I said earlier, especially Turkey's industrial sector is heavily depending on the foreign imports of the raw materials and intermediate goods. And you might see and read a lot of explanation that we suffer from the large trade deficit because we are the prime or major importers of the energy. But I'm not discarding this explanation, but these people missing the one important point. Contribution of the import of the energy to the current account balance is just constant. Its ratio in the imports is the high, about 40%. But there's a clear difference, is what I said, between two. So the prime suspect is the increase in the imports of the raw materials and intermediate goods. That's why we need to provide a good explanation why Turkey started importing raw materials and intermediate goods. I think I can provide and I can refer to the two suspects. One is the appreciation of the Turkish lira resulting from capital inflows under these neoliberal policies. Another suspect is the customs union with the European Union. When I say this, I'm not referring to the trade between the European Union and the Turkey. I'm referring to the trade ruled by European Union policies with the third countries like China and India. I think that gives a clear message. And look at what I said earlier, contribution to the energy and non-energy intermediate goods to the trade deficits. And therefore, we need to look at another side of the story. If the trade deficits contributing to the majorly and primarily to the current account deficits, how we finance this deficit? It will provide us another explanation to do why I refer to Turkey's premature deindustrialization caused by the neoliberal policies implemented since 1980s. I want you to focus on the one component here, which is a difference between the direct investment and the current account balance. And these differences will give you the amount of current account deficit financed by the debt creating flows. And these are the capital flows mainly pursuing the net returns. That's why we call it as hot money inflows and speculative short-term inflows. And mainly coming to the Turkish markets, enjoying the high rate of return. So it's scary. And the contribution of the direct investment is getting smaller and smaller. This is another danger sign. And obviously, this reflection should be seen in the how the Turkey's external debt is accumulating. So you might see the capital flows as a mirror image of the current account deficit. As these two figures illustrate and show clearly that Turkey's external debts are rising, and especially the increase in the private sector's indebtedness, which is another dimension of the problem. But the most importantly, there are some side or adverse effects of these developments. It could result in the rising unemployment, especially non-agricultural unemployment, as the figure clearly indicates. And also, this problem is creating net wealth transfer to the outside world. Here, what I use is I used Turkish net international investment position and the current account balance to see this clear connection between the saving deficiency of the Turkey and the deindustrialization in manufacturing industry. And let me repeat this point. This is the most important part of my discussion. And this figures clearly connects to saving deficiency of Turkey with the deindustrialization in manufacturing sector. You might ask why? Because if this picture clearly indicates that there is a net wealth transfer from the Turkey to the outside world, we have to focus on, and later I will show you, how the sectors trade deficit is evolving. That will clear the picture, and that will also support my main proposition or my main conclusion. Another adverse effects you can see easily here, based on our recent work with Marko Malovic of Serbia, published in Physica A in this year. It clearly shows that there is a close connection between the Turkey's growth process and the current account deficits. It's fair to conclude that not suffering or giving the current account deficit, there is no way the Turkish economy can grow in the short run and the medium run. And that's why we call it as a ball and chain effect. And clearly, Turkish growth process is constrained by the Turkey's current account deficit in the short and the medium run. If you want it, I can provide paper as well. So let's clarify and also complete our discussion. This is the most important, one of the most important, and the figure that I should try to provide you. So my claim was, remembering, and because Turkey attracting a lot of short-run capital inflows, causing appreciation of the Turkish lira, and creating a deindustrialization in the manufacturing sector. One of the indications of this is that, as you can see, as the Turkey suffers large current account deficits, and so is the manufacturing sector. Look at the development in the trade deficit of the sector. This is the inevitable result of the saving deficiency and its full reflection in the industrialization in manufacturing. If you might ask you why and how, it's clear to explain. Where the Turkey gets this money to finance the current account deficits? From the international markets, as we shown earlier. So transfer of this foreign saving turned out to be resources to purchase all these manufacturing imports, particularly raw materials, intermediate goods as well. It doesn't involve any exchange of services. importing or transferring the foreign saving into the Turkish markets and using the discounts for importing the manufacturer clearly is the dynamic behind the premature deindustrialization manufacturing sector of the Turkey. And therefore, to conclude, I think Turkey has been deindustrializing over a long period of time, because when you go back to early 80s and the 90s, we see the same picture. Even though I didn't talk about here, but we can talk about it. And especially the transfer of this old technology from England, especially used in the textile and the ready clothing sector in the Turkish manufacturing industry, is the starting point of this, I believe. And therefore, you might see contradictory, but I do believe that we have to think the premature deindustrialization, not the external instability of the Turkey or vulnerability, as the prime danger of the Turkish economy, as a result of the capital inflows. And that fully reflects an adverse developments in the saving deficiency and the deindustrialization manufacturing. And we know that, as we indicated and showed, we have been suffering persistently from the large current account deficit, and we rely on the heavy foreign borrowing. And that's why this reliance on how heavy foreign borrowing speeds the pace of the premature deindustrialization in Turkey. That's the clear explanation of the saving deficiency and the deindustrialization in Turkish manufacturing sector. And therefore, I do believe that this transfer of the foreign saving to the Turkish markets will be is the main cause of this process. So it's the kind of the choice actually Turkey has been making. If you prefer to grow by suffering with the large current account deficit, this is the inevitable result of saving deficiency fully reflected in the deindustrialization in manufacturing sector. And because it's easy to explain, if you spend more than what you produce, and this will encourage the flows of imported products into Turkish markets. Because if you want to produce any manufactured product in Turkey right now, you need the imports and large raw materials and intermediate goods. And then putting a low value added, we re-exporting these manufactured products. I can give you one clear example of this story in the city where I live, Eskişehir. We used to have a lot of raw materials and intermediate goods providers to the Arçelik refrigerator company. A lot of in the city. Now you cannot see even one of them, because to produce the refrigerator in the Eskişehir factory, they import almost all intermediate goods, all parts from the China or other countries. So we all lost all these providers, local providers. And therefore, if you put all this together, what I said so far, it's fair to conclude that deficit in Turkey, and particularly rising trade deficit of the manufacturing sector, should be considered as one of the key factors increasing the premature deindustrializations. And that being said, there are some policies we have to be implemented. We have to implement it. And one of the suggestions, everybody suggests this, but it's not easy. We have to stop relying on the imported raw materials, intermediate goods, and energy. There are some efforts, but not enough. And recently also, there's a big discussion focusing on the use of like competitive exchange rate policy. I don't think it's not a desirable strategy to Turkey because of this, the industry is heavily reliant on the imports. That's why you see in Turkey when the Turkish lira appreciates and the Turkish exports start increasing as a result of the cheap imports. But when the Turkish lira starts losing its value against the major currencies, it has been happening in the late 1980s, we suffered with the large trade deficits. And therefore, my focus and advice will be on the controlling the short-term capital inflow. I'm not saying that we have to block this short-term capital flows or control the capital flows. But there are many policies I can provide you further in details. You can easily manage the to reduce the adverse effects of this short-term capital inflows. The one major way is just to try to increase its term. But most importantly, that's my suggestion, we need a new growth or industry policy. It's for sure that the current policy, mostly being credit-oriented, is not going to solve Turkey's current problem. And therefore, first feature of this new growth policy or industry policy should be aim to increase the productivity. I'll give you one clear example. And this also gives some explanation to what this mainstream economists claiming that Turkey got stuck in the middle income trap. I don't believe in such a trap. If you have a very large number of highly skilled the human capital, which basically has high productivity levels, and combine this labor, the human capital with the average technology, like what the South Koreans has done in the past, and also the Poland and the Czech Republic and the Hungary has done, you start experiencing the rapid growth in the economy, but that's not enough. Sooner or later, this process ends. This is what people call as a middle income trap. To become competitive again, in other words, to increase the growth price constantly, you need to develop your own technology. And now the South Korean has done this, and China is trying to do this. This is what I'm referring to. But just suggesting or accepting that we need an industrial policy does not solve our problem. We need to also implement a lot of supportive macroeconomic policies. These policies should include the interest rate, exchange rates, trade policies, technology policy, labor policy, skills and education policies as well. And don't forget that heavily relying on the financial FDI never solves the Turkey's problem. This was one of the major mistakes. We made it in the late 90s and early 2000s. And therefore, we need an attractive and foreign direct investment, mostly in the form of the free greenfield investments. And lastly, I want to indicate the importance of this increasing the level of the human capital. And I do believe that today's skills will guarantee the tomorrow's jobs. Thank you for listening and your patience.
Okay, thank you very much, Mustafa. It was really a very exciting talk. Actually, you started with causes of the industrialization, referring to Palma, you mentioned about Dutch disease, and you stated your contribution of this presentation as the capital inflows leading to real exchange rate appreciation. Then came your excellent figurative presentations, value-added contribution of manufacturing, and we saw in that figure 1990s is an important point in time where a change occurred, and also we saw the employment contribution of manufacturing. Then came in your presentation came the point why current account deficit is important. And in usual presentations, current account balance to export ratio are given mostly. But there you stated the reasons of widening current account deficits. Of course, people usually mention about importing energy, but you also stated the importance of raw material and intermediate goods in imports. And then you mentioned about financing capital account balance, and also you mentioned about the importance of rising gross external debt and unemployment problem. You mentioned that saving is important, and you mentioned about current account balance and growth relation. And you stated that the main primary danger is the premature deindustrialization, and you said that new growth and industrial policies are needed.
That's correct.
And you almost mentioned all areas in macroeconomics needing a reform, maybe, and the importance of developing our own technology. That is an important thing that you mentioned, and financing by FDI is not a solution for the problem. I hope that I understood your presentation.
Yeah, exactly.
And, okay.
Just only the last point. I refer to the financial FDI.
Financial FDI.
Okay.
Yes.
We have to make a distinction between the greenfield investment or direct investment and the financial FDI. Mostly attracting the foreign banks in the Turkish markets. This is the process I'm referring to.
Okay.
Excellent summary.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that I understood in a correct way. Yeah. So now I am opening the floor to the audience. Any questions, comments that will come to Professor Özer from the audience?
Can I have a question?
Yes. Yes.
Hi,
Professor
Erdal. It's good to see you again.
Okay, thank you, Mustafa.
Yeah, it
yes,
has. When was the last time we met in like Seyfettin's meeting conference?
Yeah, it's a long time. Yes.
Yeah, that was okay.
Yes. Yes, I have a question. In Turkish economy, we have.
Can you speak a little bit louder, Erdal?
Okay. In Turkish economy,
Yes.
we just realized that if we have a high deficit, this means that the Turkish economy reach the high economic growth rate. And if we try to reduce the current account deficit, this means that the Turkish economy is having a low GDP growth rate.
Exactly.
And I think we need to have, just low deficit, high GDP growth rate.
Exactly. That's my solution.
Yes. What is the main formula? Because we cannot do that now. This is really problem for the Turkish economy, and we try to reach, the high GDP growth rate and low deficit, but we face some difficulties. What is the maybe you try to explain this point. I just catch your presentation at the end of.
Erdal, thanks. Excellent question. I think I missed the explain in my presentation. So answering your question is the easy one. What is we have to look at like the saving and the investment ratios of Turkey right now. It's around like 30s, and the saving ratio is around 25. And according to the new figures. So to complete a full process of new industrialization policy, which should be a growth friendly, first of all, we have to increase like saving income ratios to over like 35%. At least. And also, as you might know, and I'm sure you will know, and we have been even like investing any money into like gross fixed investment, equipment, machinery in last almost like 2 years. This is not only the last 2 years. Like when you take it from 1980s, there is no significant increase in our nation's gross capital formation. That's the missing part of our policies. So that involves, addition to these 2 points, we have to also adopt some kind of like import substitution policies for, especially producing the like major inputs can be used in the manufacturing industry. That's the way I believe. And other policies should be framed according to these principles. I hope I answered your question, Erdal.
Okay, thank you. I have just one short question. And in the Turkish economy, when the debt ratio or the share of the debt in the GDP increase, let's say if this ratio reach 50 or over 50, the country face some difficulties about just have a default.
Yes.
And is there any ratio for the share of the current deficit in the GDP? Is a threshold level? Do you you can say any point or threshold for the deficit?
Thank you, Erdal. That's another excellent question. To answer your questions, I want to first indicate the differences between the country debt and the public debt. You're referring to the public debt. What matters is the country debt, which is fully reflected by the developments in the net international investment position of the debt scale. Let me just provide you 2 examples, just support my the claim. What happened was the Greece during the global crisis, and compare it with the Japan and the Germany. When you look at the public debt income ratio of these 3 nations, Greece was the lowest, but it suffered. But there was no crisis in Japan, neither Japan nor Germany, because these countries are a net creditor. So their country debt is just positive. in other words, they are not the net borrower. Therefore, we need to focus on the net international position. That's why. That's scary. It's the threshold level is 40%. If the net investment position income ratio is over 30%, it's creating a danger signals for the country. Because it gives you the full picture of countries involving in the international borrowing and the crediting as well. That's why when you focus on the public debt income ratio, you don't have to worry about the Turkey's public debt. It's not giving any scary signal for the future. But when you focus on the country debt, we have to worry about, which is the accumulative effects of the past current account deficits. Net investment position is a stock variable. It is the accumulative effects of, fully reflects the accumulative effects of the past current account deficits. That's why I said what matters is the country debt, not the public debt. Thank you for your excellent questions, Erdal. It's good to see you again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Erdal. And now, any other questions from the audience?
If you allow me, Sıdıka, I want to say hi to one of my friends, Malisha Dukic of Serbia. Hi, Malisha.
Hi, it was very interesting to listen to your presentation and arguments. I had a similar question on the public debt ratio, but you already answered it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Good to, yeah. Please say hi to the friends there.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from audience? Now, I want to ask actually one question in order to earn your suggested $1 million.
Yes, that's a good question, though. I thought Erdal is gonna ask it, though.
I think he missed that part. It was at the very beginning.
Did partly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have the chance to earn that $1 million. Now, since Econometric Research Association is a part of this organization, and you made a descriptive analysis of the problem. And since we are an association focused on econometrics, can I make econometric analysis of this topic? Is data available? And then at the end of this econometric analysis, can I earn the $1 million?
Yes, of course. What I suggest you, if you were my PhD student, for example, by the way, I strongly urge if there are some young scholars, my young colleague, and focus on this topic too, and the relationship between the deindustrialization and the growth.
In fact, there are quite a lot of PhD or master students in the audience. Mm-hmm.
And my point is that first you have to classify the growth theories based on whether they are the sector specific or activity specific. I hope they understand what I mean by this. It's a very, very important distinction though. If the growth is a sector specific, then the effect will differ from if the growth is activity specific or both. So if you prepare an econometric explanation for this, you need to go over the literature regarding the solo growth model, some part of the endogenous growth model, and also Kaldarian perspective of the explanation of the growth as well. But for Turkey, my hunch, especially for expression, I have no econometric evidence, is that Turkey's growth process is not a sector specific. It is an activity specific. That's why the industrialization process has been creating a lot of adverse social and economic effects. Main channel is through the unemployment, and main channel through the young unemployment as well. But apart from my suggestions, if you're willing to test its effect econometrically, you have to put the trade as an exogenous variable into your model as well. This is all I can say.
Okay, thank you. So, young friends, this
well, it could be a good PhD thesis, though.
Yeah. This presentation is very fruitful for our young friends to determine their thesis topic. There are lots of ideas that can be studied from your presentation. So for that also I would like to thank you. And now I want to ask once more to the audience any other questions to Professor Özer. Okay, as far as I can see, no
Sıdıka,
other questions.
let me just make
final words from you.
Yeah, let me just say that, well, some people might thought that when they saw my name on the conference, I might, provide some econometric evidences. And what I truly believe is that I'm not a fetishist of the econometrics work. I do value its importance. But what I value more is that you have to provide some insights, providing some evidences using the raw data. And your econometric evidences based on the modeling should be supportive of these evidences. This is what I believe and what I suggest to our young colleagues. But establishing the relationship between the current account deficits and the growth, what I used was a frequency domain causality approach. And if someone needs the paper, I can provide easily. It's in the it's already published in Sıdıka back to the October issue, I guess, or September issue. I'm not sure.
Yes, I completely agree with your idea that intuition for the topics is much more important than econometric modeling. And I do believe that actually econometrics serves to support the idea.
Yes.
That is also my thought. But after your important contribution to intuition as thesis, I think our young colleagues can go on with econometric modeling, and we can help them in that aspect also. So, any questions? I guess no other questions. So I want to end this joining now. And as I said, from now on, we will try to invite invite people in every month and continue this cooperation till the end of this year and the coming beginning of the coming or to the end of academic year, let's say. We will continue by inviting people in this platform. Okay, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We would like to see you again in our future meetings, and good evening to all of you.
Thank you for having me, Sıdıka.
Thank you very much once more to you, Mustafa.
Please say hi to Erdem.
Okay, okay, I will. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay, bye to all of you. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Cem. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cem, for joining us.
So can I leave this session?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you once again.
Bye.
Bye.